Hey, this is Joe from Personas. Today we're going to talk about BAM, the StudioLive Series 3 mixer, specifically the brand new interface mode that we launched a few months ago that can completely change your workflow if you own one of these StudioLive mixers. Now, this is the original StudioLive 24 Series 3. We don't make this particular one anymore, but if you look here on our website, these are the current models. The 24 that I have is most closely associated with this 32SX. But if you own any of our Series 3 mixers, meaning any of the ones that when we transitioned from the older classic ones to the ones with the touchscreen, then this new update is for you, and it'll give you something called interface mode. So, historically, if you wanted to do routing, external routing on the mixer, it was a little bit confusing. So, for example, I did a video not long ago where I routed some signal out of Studio One out to my guitar pedal board and back in. With a regular interface, like, say, the upside down quantum 2626 or something like that, you would just route things out an output and in an input, right? You would route your guitar that's playing back from Studio One out channel 7, then run that to your pedal board and then record that back in on channel 8 or whatever you wanted, right? Channel 1. And you would just set those inputs and outputs and you're done. With the mixer, you have to insert a couple of extra steps. So I'll show you how the old way of doing it, and then I'll show you how interface mode makes it a lot easier. Okay, here's the StudioLive mixer. This is set up in just normal mode where we go 1 through 16, 17 through 24, and we can bank over and see channels 25 through 32, our effects channels, buses, things like that, okay? My microphone, for example, is coming down channel 3 right now. So if I wanted to route a guitar out of an output on the back of this mixer to go over to my pedal board, turn off, I would need to do the following. I would say I would route the guitar out channel 6. So I would set channel 6 here as a USB channel versus an analog channel. And I would route the guitar here. Then I need to send this out somewhere else. I could do that a couple of ways. I could assign it to a subgroup, which we can see up here. So subgroup, something, blah, blah, blah. That's not actually the way I do it. The way I would actually assign it is I would come over to these submixes here, and I would say, let's look at submix 11. Okay, submix 11 is here. Now we're showing submix 11. This is the mix that's coming out of the literally mix 11 output on the back, so we could set up a specific mix for that. Well, for this instance, I just want channel 6 going out of that, right? Then I would plug a cable on the output of that board. There's a bunch of outputs on the back. Let's actually, you know what, let's look at it. Yeah, so here we go. So that would come out this literal XLR output jack here. We would run that off to our pedal board and do whatever we want to do to it. Then we would bring it back into one of these inputs. Let's say we wanted to bring it back into, I don't know, channel 9. So we would plug it into channel 9 here. And when we went back to our mixer, we would make sure that we had channel 9 selected, and that's the channel, maybe we turn up to listen to it, that's the channel that's going to be feeding back into the software. You see how that's several steps? We got to come out of an output on the channel here, then route that channel out of an output. So it's coming down channel 6, then getting sent out mix 11, then coming back in channel 9, and that's where everyone's brain explodes. Well, we don't want your brain to explode. So we created a new mode. If you don't need that kind of deep functionality of setting up buses with multiple things, feeding outputs and all that customization, if you just want to use it more as a straight up interface for this scenario, then you can. Maybe you only use those mixes when you've got a live tracking session with a bunch of musicians who each need their own headphone mix. That's great. But when you're in the room by yourself, you don't need all those extra buses. You just need to be able to send things out your interface and back in using our pipeline plugin or things like that. So first thing you want to do is open up Universal Control. If you're not familiar with this is a free app that you get when you register your device, and this allows you to do lots of really cool things. If you ever have issues with a Personas piece of hardware, like an audio interface or a mixer, chances are opening up Universal Control will help you fix it. So a lot of times it's a firmware thing. You upgraded your computer, but you didn't upgrade the firmware in your interface to match up and to be compatible. You come here, it tells you that you need to upgrade firmware, and you're good to go. As you can see, I have 3 different Personas devices connected to my computer right now, but we're mainly interested in the StudioLive. So what you're going to do is open it up, and you're going to come let's go back. Let's go back here, and we'll say check for updates. And it's quickly going to ping the server and see if any of my connected devices have updated firmware. If you own a StudioLive Series 3, okay, apparently there's updates now. I'm not going to do that now. It will tell you, you do the update, and it'll say, hey, there's a new firmware for the StudioLive. And you'll say, let's go, let's upgrade that firmware. It's probably a good idea to back up save your scenes and anything you want, because there's always a chance when you're upgrading firmware that something gets lost. But once you're good to go, you update the firmware. It takes a few minutes. You'll see the screen on your mixer change to say it's updating the firmware. But once it's done, you'll have this new mode. Now, it's really easy to turn on and off, but it's a pretty powerful thing that bypasses a lot of that stuff we just talked about. So there's two ways to get to it. If you're in Universal Control, you can get to interface mode here by just clicking that. And it says, turning on interface mode will set up all USB send and return routing to support this mode and disable flex mixes. Do you want to continue? That just means these mixes over here on the side of the mixer that I showed you, these ones right here, those aren't being used anymore. They're being disabled. We're taking that middleman out of the picture, if that makes sense. And that's what you're saying, yes, I'm okay with that. So if you have any crazy routing done, if you go into interface mode, if you've come into your mixer and under digital patching or audio routing, you've done some pretty crazy patching customization here, there's a chance you're going to lose that when you go into interface mode. It'll go back to its kind of default settings, but you can always go back and forth. But here's how you get to it on the mixer itself. You go to Home, and then you go to System, and then you'll see right here is interface mode. If I turn that on, it gives me that same message. Do you wish to continue? And then it takes a second to reconfigure itself, and then you're good to go. I had to actually come back out of interface mode because my voice that you're hearing right now uses those flex mixes, so I'm going to leave it out of interface mode so you can hear me talk. But basically, here's how that works. Instead of, you basically can use your mixer less and just access the outputs directly from Studio One. So let's use our old scenario. We want to send a guitar out to my pedal board. Now, instead of sending it down channel 6 on the board and then routing that to mix output 11, we can now just come directly output 11. So what does that mean specifically? It means now when you look in Studio One or whatever DAW you're using and you look at your available outputs, you will see outputs 1 through 16 available as your outputs for your digital audio system. So now I can select outputs 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 15 and 16 inside of my DAW, and it will automatically go straight to this output on the mixer. I don't have to set up flex mixes. I don't have to touch a fader. It is now just acting like a really big honking audio interface with no mixer attached. Now I can still use the mixer for bringing inputs and setting up a mix there, but I can't use flex mixes, but now I'm able to send specific tracks out, specific outputs to do all sorts of crazy external routing. So if you are the kind of person who does a lot of crazy external routing and you have a StudioLive or you've been thinking about a StudioLive, interface mode makes that workflow wonderful. So now I can say, send this out, the XLR output on channel 6 on the back of the mixer, and it goes straight there. I don't have to touch anything else on the mixer. It just goes there and works exactly like you'd expect it to. If I confused you at all, which is very likely, you can head to our website. I will link this in the description, or just Google StudioLive interface mode. It'll take you to this wonderful article written by Ryan Roulard that walks you through every step of the process and shows you exactly where to find things. I refer back to this when I was familiarizing myself with interface mode, and it was wonderful. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, but otherwise this article should answer them for you. Go try it out, see if it fits in your workflow, and I'll see you next time.